That's the highest degree of wara. But the lesser degree of wara is abstinence from that which is suspicious, out of fear that you may fall into that which is clearly haram. So these are 2 degrees of wara. One is higher than the other. The highest would be abstinence from that which is permissible. It's just permissible. But you abstain from it because you don't want to indulge in that which is permissible, because you know that there is, the more you indulge in that which is permissible, the closer you get to that which is impermissible. Because there are sometimes like a larger distance and sometimes a smaller distance between that which is permissible and that which is impermissible. Do you know something called in medicine therapeutic index? I really marveled at this phenomenon because it's just such a comparable phenomenon to what we have in the deen. There is something called therapeutic index in medicine, which means what? Which means the safety index of that medicine. You know, if you take 1 teaspoon, you should be okay. The effect you will get the effect of the medicine, the desired effect of the medicine if you take 1 teaspoon. If you take 10 teaspoons, you should still be okay. It's a medicine that has a very wide therapeutic window, or like a safety window. And for some medications, the desirable effect will happen at 1 teaspoon. Toxic effect can happen at 1.5 teaspoon. And that is a medicine that has a very narrow safety window of safety. How does this relate to what we're talking about here? It relates very much to what we're talking about here. Because food, for instance, has a wide window of safety. Because you can eat a little more and you still will be safe. You're not going to fall into haram if you eat a little more. If you eat a little more than this, still you could be safe and so on. But the other desire, lustful desires, desire of the other sex, that has a very narrow window of safety. So the first look, when you see someone in the street, and the first look is for you, the second is against you. Because it is a very risky desire, very powerful and risky desire, and that's why you should really have very good control over it. And so, how much permissible are you going to leave depends on the seriousness of this issue, and depends on the consequences of falling into indulgence in this particular issue. Even sometimes in marital relationships, people should leave some permissible things as a protection from haram, right? I'm not going to go into the detail of any of this stuff, but they should leave some things that are permissible to protect them from haram in 2 ways. One way is that, to get close to certain acts can lead you into falling into them, and that would be haram. Those acts would be haram themselves, or this act would be haram in and by itself. The other way is that when you exhaust all of your imaginations, then you will eventually be dissatisfied. And then your imaginations will go beyond that which is permissible, which is your wife or your husband, because you have already exhausted all of your imaginations. Therefore, to leave some room, like some distance, and to avoid some things that would be permissible would be a protection for you from falling into that which is permissible, and from this indulgence that will result in seeking other things, because you have already exhausted your imaginations. And that is something that we see frequently clearly see in many societies, where in many liberal societies, you see that people have exhausted their imaginations and then they have sought the most weird and most absurd things, pedophilia, for instance, is a manifestation. Xenophilia, for instance, is another manifestation, because xeno is from animals. It's another manifestation of people exhausting their imaginations. You exhaust your imaginations not only with one spouse, but with the entire kind of men or women, for instance, and then you look for things that are different, which could be pedophilia, for instance, and then you exhaust those imaginations, and then you look for things that are even farther away and more different and more weird, and that's when you fall into xenophilia and some other practices. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to leave some distance between you and haram. And the farther away you are from haram, if you feel like indulging, and your usual thing is here, and you feel like indulging, and then you go here, but haram is there, too far away from you. And that is what is meant by wara. If you do everything that is permissible, but you stay away from anything that is suspicious, that is a degree of wara. But that is not the highest degree of wara. That's the second highest degree of wara. The highest would be to leave like a safety cushion, margin, or a margin of safety, or a cushion between you and that which is haram, and that is wara. So back to what I was talking about. There is a difference between maqata al-ahkam, which is the intersections of rulings, because there is haram, halal, wajib, mustahab, etc. And these are defined very precisely. And madarij al-wara, the ranks of wara. And so when we talk in a fiqh class, for instance, we have to be precise, and we have to say, this is wajib, this is mustahab, this is this is that. But how do you treat yourself? How do you handle yourself? You try as much as you can to not only stop at the intersections of ahkam, but to try to ascend the stations of wara as much as you can. And in this case, how you make yourself fearful of something that is suspicious or something that is controversial, you tell yourself that this will bring me a step down or a step lower, will bring me closer to haram, and if I fall into haram, then certainly punishment will be my lot, and loss will be my lot. Now, that is in case you don't have an opinion of yourself, but if you have an opinion, then the controversy does not matter at all. If you have an opinion, you believe that, this is wajib, and someone else says it's mustahab, but I do believe it's wajib, then Allah will judge me according to what I believe, not what He says. So if you believe it's wajib, then it is wajib. Then it is wajib. That's why many times, sisters sometimes they from different places they call and they say, just the other day one sister called me. She's from the East Coast, and she said that her husband wants her to take off her niqab, and he says if she doesn't take off her niqab, he will not continue